Hey moms, welcome back to our channel. Today we are continuing with Humanizing Moms. And for this episode, we have two letters that were sent to us by two moms that we know. And we're going to start out with Angel is going to read a letter from Dawn.
So Dawn is a 40-year-old mother of two boys. One is going to be 5 in October and the other is 9 months old. She works full-time from home during the day, so both of her boys are in daycare. So she's very close to me in particular, but Melinda's known her for a little while as well. And when I told her what I was doing, I kind of circled back and asked her if she wanted to be a part of it, and if she didn't want to be on camera, she could write a letter. So that's what she did. She wrote us a letter. So I'm going to read that from my phone. Okay. After the birth of my first son, it probably took a couple of years for my body to feel like it was my own again. Pretty much from the time I found out I was pregnant, I no longer felt like me or a wife. I was a mom. My purpose was to grow and protect this little being, and even though I loved being pregnant, my body had been taken over pretty much from the get-go, and it was hard to see who I was anymore. From issues with self-image, a day-to-day struggle for me that got compounded with pregnancy, to feeling like my body was simply a vessel to provide for my son, to having to change what I consumed and what activities I partook in, made it so hard to remember who I had been, much less feel like her. Even after I was no longer the primary food source for him, I didn't feel like myself. I didn't know exactly how or when, but I eventually overcame most of it. I had hoped that this time would be different. And while it's not as intense or overwhelming of a feeling, I still don't feel like me. In the mirror, what stands out are the body, skin, and hair changes and marks associated with being a mom. I wouldn't change being a mom for anything in this world, but I do look forward to one day feeling like I'm my own person again. Not only do I have the physical sense of self changes, but there are mental and emotional changes associated with motherhood as well. For example, lots of people warned me about the worry, sadness, and guilt that can accompany putting your child in daycare. What they didn't prepare me for was the fact that these caregivers would be the ones to witness some of my son's milestone moments, and I would feel jealous of them and their relationship with my child at times. Or the fact that as he got older, they could see a very different version of him than I saw at home. Another thing most didn't tell me was that it was perfectly normal to feel super emotional at various stages postpartum, and that it didn't necessarily mean I had the dreaded PPD. I remember reaching a point where I stopped communicating how I was feeling or the extent of my feelings because people didn't seem to understand. And because it was different to them, they kept asking if I thought it was postpartum depression. My doctors confirmed it wasn't, and that what I was experiencing was normal, but my community didn't seem to understand, so I internalized. Thankfully, with my second child, I have a larger and more open community of moms that don't bullshit each other and claim that it's rainbows and unicorns if it's not. And the truth is, it often isn't, but that's perfectly okay. It doesn't mean we don't love our kids or motherhood or that we aren't enjoying this parenthood journey. It simply means that sometimes it's not perfect and can downright be hard as hell. Communities and resources like Momestly Me can make a huge difference, and I am grateful for that. We all have our own struggles, and losing my identity outside of being a mom is probably the most prevalent to me. I still don't feel like me, and I likely won't for a while, but at least I know I'm not the only one. With all the judgment and mom shaming in this world, I'm thankful that my community supports one another. We're there to listen, celebrate the joys, help through the tough times, and most of all, let each other know we're not alone in this. So,
Yes.
I also work full time, and I've had to deal with guilt of going back to work. So I think that feeling that way is hard regardless. I am very fortunate. My husband works opposite me, so he's with our son during the day, so we don't have to do daycare. But I think one of the things that she mentioned that I think is kind of hard is people automatically jumping to this place of, well, you can't have negative thoughts unless you have postpartum depression. Like it's not normal or okay to be sad or confused or any of these negative feelings after you have a baby unless there's something seriously wrong.
That's just not true though.
No, I mean, I never had a lot of breakdowns or anything after Oliver was born, but the fourth or fifth night that we were home, he was laying down, he was asleep, and my husband and I were getting ready to go to bed. And I want to say that I think Rick went out and took the dog out or something. But anyway, I was standing in the kitchen in front of the sink, not doing anything, and I just cried my eyes out. And when Rick came in, he didn't know what to do, of course. And he said, are you okay? Has something happened? And I told him, I said, the only thing I can think of is I was in that moment really overwhelmed with all the changes that were happening. After we came home from the hospital, we have a baby, but two, our apartment was different. Our everyday life was different. Every minute was different than it had ever been before. And now my son is part of everything, and it's not weird to look around and see his toys or to have to do his laundry or worry about his schedule because all of that is normal now.
Mm-hmm.
So I remember having like that moment of, oh my God, is this what postpartum depression feels like? And I think that because of the way that people discuss PPD, there's this like weird connotation that you can't have any negative feelings unless it's serious. And then now we start to question ourselves, which I think causes even more negative feelings because then you're thinking, okay, is that what I'm going through? And then you start like overanalyzing every moment of like everything that you're doing. And I'm lucky enough that I had the support system that I have that mine never got, that spiraled out of control. But it's hard. It's hard to not be able to say, hey, I had a bad day without people being judgmental or people telling you that, well, that's because something's seriously wrong. You need to go to your doctor. Like there's a time and a place for that. And it just seems like it's so quick to go from 0 to 100.
Right.
And then the other thing that I think stuck out to me was, she mentioned that she started to internalize and she wasn't communicating how she felt. And while I didn't necessarily experience that myself, one thing I did feel, because I did talk about negative things so often, because I was so confused by them, because we're told we're not supposed to feel them, that I kind of felt like a burden. I kind of felt like by constantly talking about these things with other moms that I'm being this like negative thing in their life because I have these things going on and I'm talking about them all the time.
Sure.
So I know that was one thing that I kind of fell off and on because I wanted to talk about it because I didn't want to internalize. And then it just kind of seemed like, oh, am I talking about it too much?
Right.
So I think that was most of the things that stuck out to me. And then, of course, I also struggled with identity. I went through the same thing where I didn't really know where I fit. It got a lot better for me once I went back to work. But before that, you kind of feel like you don't know what your point is. Like, it's weird because it's like you obviously have the purpose of being a mom, you have a baby to take care of and it's your responsibility and you accept that naturally. But I think that the other side of that is like, but I'm also more than that.
Right.
And you don't really know how to put that in your file. It's like you threw everything away and the only thing left is the one labeled mom and you don't really know how to get back to any of that other stuff.
I can definitely relate to that part of her story, of that losing your identity a little bit, but that hasn't happened to me until recently. My daughter is a year old now.
Yeah.
And when she was born, I had my maternity leave from work, and on the last day of my maternity leave, I submitted a resignation letter because I couldn't imagine being any other place. And we were fortunate enough for me to be able to do that and make it work. But over that year, I have come to the realization that I miss going to work. Not that I would trade any moment of having those days with her, because when we talked about daycare, that was one of the things that stuck out, was exactly what Dawn said. Other people seeing my child reach their milestones. It's different from your husband being able to be home with your
Right.
child.
You're
'Cause
still a
they-
little jealous.
I mean,
Just a little bit.
yeah, but you can get videos from your
Yeah.
husband and you can watch it happening, and
That's true.
it's a little different when they're at school and it's somebody that's not a stranger, but they're not the parent, you know? So I am struggling with that now, especially after seeing some people that I've worked with recently and like reconnecting and spending some time with them.
Right.
I am struggling a little bit with just being mom. And I think that's another reason that I'm so happy that we are able to do this and do these videos and be able to talk to you guys, because that is something that is kind of helping me find my identity again. Like as a struggling mom who's been at home, because staying at home, even though you do have that time with your child, it's really easy to lose who you are when you're home with your baby all the time. And it's beautiful, but you can definitely lose your other purpose in life with that. And yeah, that's definitely something I can relate to now that she's a little bit older. It's interesting because we all go through different stages of these things and at different stages of our child's lives.
Yep. And I know you mentioned too, when we talked about some of this before, was that you didn't, you could relate to the communication thing in the sense that like you would tell people and then.
It was a little bit different
Right.
because people expected me to have a more difficult time than I did because I had a C-section. And I expected me to have a more difficult time than I did. But I heal quickly, apparently. And I was okay to do things. And we went out and we did things. And I stopped telling people that we were doing well, that I was good. I just told them about the baby. After, I don't know, maybe a month and a half, I just stopped telling people how I was because they thought I was lying, or they thought that nobody ever mentioned postpartum depression or anything, and that's not something that ever entered my mind. I was never in denial about anything, but people expected me to say, "Oh, it's so hard, and I need a lot of help," and I just didn't. And that's not to toot my own horn. That's not to boast or anything. It's just my experience. And people turned what I thought was a positive thing, that we were adjusting and that I was okay. I thought that was a good thing. And people made me feel terrible about it because I was okay and they said I shouldn't be. And that's like the opposite end of the spectrum. And you would think that people would be like, "Oh, that's really great." Because when you're not having an easy time, people are more likely to encourage you. But when you are okay, they say, "Oh, are you sure? Are you sure you're okay?" "Yes, I am. Thank you. And my baby's great. So we're just going to talk about her now." Like, it's mom shaming in a different kind of way, you know, and that's not okay either, you know.
We'd like to thank Dawn for taking the time to send in the letter. We know sometimes it can be a little difficult to share things that are, less than pleasant. So we appreciate her letting us share a little bit of her story, so that there are people, I'm sure, out there who will hear it and can relate to what she feels and has felt, and, some of the things that are similar to what we felt.
Hey moms, thanks for stopping by and checking out this installment of Humanizing Moms. If you like what we're doing, let us know by hitting the like button or commenting below. To check out more of the series, make sure you subscribe to our channel and hit the bell to get notified when the next installment is up. Thanks again for stopping by, and we'll see you next time.